Hello and welcome to today's video where I start a new 100 Heads challenge. When I started this spread, I wasn't sure that I was going to actually be starting the 100 Heads. I just really wanted to draw some portraits. And then after about 3, I decide, you know what? This is going to be a new challenge. So part 2 of 100 Heads challenge starting. Here we go. I have been slowly collecting portraits on my Pinterest page, and I don't quite have 100 yet, but I know that at the rate that I'm collecting them, by the time I need a full 100, I'll have a full 100. And I will link my Pinterest below if you are interested in doing some of these same heads. And this tape has got to go. I have to give her more room. So I have her all plotted out now, and I'm getting my swatch sheets out. I want to try something that I've never tried before, but I've seen it in a lot of different places, and that is to, I'm forgetting what it's called. Oh yeah, it's called the 3-zone color theory. So the face can be portioned out into 3 different zones. There's yellow, red, and blue tones, and the yellow is the forehead because that's where like the sun is really bright and shining, and it's usually a warm tone because of the sun. The pink or red is around the cheeks, nose, and ears because that's where thinner skin comes into play and more blood flows there. And then the blue is usually in shadow, and that's kind of what shadows do, is create like a bluish hue. So I'm trying this method out in markers, and I have no idea what I am doing. I struggle a lot with this one with her looking too masculine, because the blue tone that I chose, I didn't have a great subtle blue to choose from, so I had to choose like a gray blue, and it just made it look like 5 o'clock shadow the whole time. So I was struggling the whole time to try to fight making her feel more feminine. I go over it several times with that pink tone, the very subtle pink tone that I chose for the cheeks. I go over the whole thing and give it like a wash of pink to try to counterbalance the blue and like not make it look so manly. At this point, I'm trying to just see what happens once I add the charcoal on top. Oh yeah, that's my new favorite thing, is to just add charcoal to things. I really enjoy how dark it can get, and I enjoy the texture that it gives, and I really like blending it. It's very satisfactory to me. Satisfying, that's the word. So I'm learning a lot about charcoal as I've been doing charcoal these last few weeks. And what I have found that I really like to do is go in phases. So the first phase is to get pretty much really dark colors down and not worry about anything super light. And then I go in with a blending tool and smudge out the dark parts, and that will lighten up the dark parts that you'll have to come back later and make it darker. But when you do that, your blending tool gets really dark from the charcoal. The charcoal gets on the smudging tool, and then you can use the smudging tool to get some of those really light tones very gradually without needing to add any more charcoal from your pencil or stick or whatever charcoal you are using. This is the first charcoal that I've tried. It was a gift from my mother-in-law, just kind of to try to dip my feet into charcoal without being burdened by a really expensive thing that I don't know how to use. Does that ever happen to you guys where if you get something really expensive that you don't really know how to use, you end up never using it because you're too afraid that you're going to do it wrong, and it's expensive, so you don't want to waste it? So I'm using this as just a learning tool for now, and then once I figure out that I really like it, which I know that I do, when I run out of these, I will do some more research and figure out exactly what charcoal I might want to get next. So stay tuned for that. So as I do my finishing touches on this girl, her chin is still looking too masculine. So I'm trying to see if I can make her chin smaller and if that will help make her look more feminine. Also, she's making a very like herpy-derpy face. I don't know why. I don't know what it is that I did that made her look like that. I think it's her teeth and her bottom lip together. Somehow the relationship just got lost in translation, and I don't know how to fix it. I might come back later at a very much later date than today and see if I can fix it. You know, she doesn't look too bad. You can see where I was going with it. And, you know, the red, pink, blue, it doesn't look super terrible now that I look back at it. Okay, I am really, really excited about this guy. I wanted to draw him first, but I knew that I haven't drawn portraits in a minute, so I wanted to warm up before I got to him. And it's funny because the warm-up made me feel much tighter because I was really stressed about the color situation and her mouth. So I'm going into this second portrait much looser, and I'm not going to allow myself to get very tight. At least that's the goal. So I'm going in with my pencil and I'm trying to make all of the preparations before I color him up. And I am totally dropping the whole yellow, red, blue thing. It's not my skill set yet. I want to do more trials before... Ah, man, who am I kidding? I don't want to do it. I want to just have fun instead of stress about it. So this is just a fun one. So I'm going in with some grays, a very light gray and a mid-tone gray, and I'm keeping it a lot warmer this time. And I'm actually using some grays on the face to try to darken up the shadows faster. So that's my goal with putting the gray down on the face. And I have to sharpen up my pencil because I'm going in with the eyes first. I don't usually do the eyes first. I don't like to, and I will try to tell you why, but it's more of a feeling than anything. If I do the eyes first and they don't match the face, I can't really tell if it doesn't match until after the whole face is done. And then by that time, it's too small of a playground to work in to fix. But if I finish the face first and then do the eyes last, then I can kind of get a feeling from the face on how small or big the iris needs to be and the placement of them to make sense within the socket. Because there are things that I have to change all the time when I'm drawing the face that end up kind of changing the shape of the eyes without meaning to. So I wish that I did the eyes last here. I think the irises turn out a little bit too big. Okay, so now I'm going in with the super dark parts. One thing that was really, really exciting to me about this portrait was the lighting. The lighting is incredible. You get really dark darks and really bright light. So I'm going in with super dark charcoal and just doing my first preliminary layer, phase 1. And with this beard, oh man, it was so fun to just do wiggle lines and do like that whole twitching motion. That's one of my favorite things. I'm using the same blue as I did for her shirt, also because it was that same blue in the portrait. my creativity is not off the charts, okay? So then I take out the thicker blending stump so that I have a lot of room to work with and also stay pretty loose. And then I go in with the face and I'm working on the dark parts. It doesn't matter if it's the hair or the face, I'm getting the darkest parts down. And then I'm gonna work on the smaller, darkest parts by getting my super tiny blending stump and getting the super small parts of the face dark. You know, I just said that. Maybe your attention span isn't as short as mine. I guess that's a side effect of doing art is Okay, I'm so excited about this. I can't think of where to start my sentence. I really, really have a short attention span. It got really bad when I started having kids because they ask questions every 5 seconds and you can't finish a thought before getting interrupted. So my brain has shifted. I've also purged all unnecessary information so that I can remember things like, I can't even remember. I can't give you one example. But once I started this art journey where my kids are old enough to pretty much do things by themselves and with each other, that they don't need me as much as they did before. So it allowed me to pick up my hobby of art again. So that's where this art hobby got picked back up. So Where was I going with this? Come on, smooth brain, grow some wrinkles. Oh my gosh, that's literally where I was going with this. I have been really wanting to grow wrinkles in my brain. I want a big old wrinkly brain. I want to be smarter. I want to retain more interest in long form things. And I want my attention span to grow again. Those are all side benefits of this project of just having an art hobby. I started out barely being able to finish a 30-minute drawing, and now this whole spread took me 7 hours. And I feel more like myself than I have in a really long time. Okay, huge rant over. I'm sorry, I skipped over that last guy so much because I was just really excited about the wrinkles in the brains. Okay, on to this third portrait. I was really excited about this. I wanted a person down here, but I didn't plan ahead very well. So I ended up coloring the second guy's coat a little bit too far down, and I wish that I didn't. However, I needed to find a portrait to put here that could be covered up with hair. That was my ultimate goal. And this guy was in the perfect pose. He was looking right, which meant that his hair was going to be on the left side, which meant that I could cover up the coat with the black hair. See where I'm going with this? It fits perfectly. Also, I was really excited to figure out the color tones of a darker skinned person. I don't have dark skin. I don't have a lot of experience coloring dark skin, and I want to grow more experience. So I figured out the best way to start is with the lightest skin tone for the highlights, and then slowly start incorporating the darker sections, and then going back with that highlight tone just to blend it out to get a really good gradient between the darker parts and the highlights. And I'm super thrilled about how this guy turned out. He's probably one of my favorites on the whole page. I just really enjoy how I basically just really like his style. I like how he does his hair and his beard. It's just a really good reference. So now I'm going in with a dark brown color, and I'm just getting an underlayer before I do the dark charcoal for the hair and beard. When you do charcoal over just white paper, you get the little white flecks of the paper popping through, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to look as smooth and dark as possible from the very beginning, so really I'm trying to get the charcoal to work for me and not against me in the end. So I'm going in again with that same skin tone that I used before, just doing another layer of it. Just really trying to get the under drawing good before I start in with the charcoal. Once you do charcoal, you can't really add color after the fact, or if you do, you risk really muddying up the charcoal or muddying up your color. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted all the color good before I do the charcoal. I started out again with a super crisp, sharp pencil, and I started with the facial features just because they're super tiny, and with a really sharp pencil, you can really use the super tiny tip to get those super tiny details. So now that the pencil's a little bit duller, I'm going to get this hair in. I am so excited about this hair. I love how dark it gets. So do you see around the edges of the hair how there's that like line that didn't cover up with charcoal? That is graphite. That's from my pencil. Charcoal doesn't stick to graphite. Graphite's too smooth and charcoal just doesn't want to stick to it. So that is one thing that you have to consider when you are doing graphite. I should have erased the underdrawing better before I started in with the charcoal. So food for thought. So now I'm going in really loose with the darkest parts of the coat, and I find that holding my pencil like this is really helpful in not worrying about the details. It kind of forces you to stay looser with it and use more of like your whole arm movement rather than your wrist movement. And those broader strokes from way up high in your shoulder is super great for staying really loose. So I'm using a super tiny blending stump for the hair because I want that charcoal to transfer onto the stump so that I can get some of these shadows onto the hair, onto the face in a very gentle way, because I don't really feel like introducing a lot of charcoal to the face. I really enjoy how it looks right now with just marker. So I'm cleaning up some of the outside a little bit, and then I go back in to add in just a little bit more crispness of details. I overwork the eyes here. I fuss with it so much, and I cut out a lot of it so that you didn't have to fuss with me. So 3 heads are done. This is where I was going to finish the video, but then I just got that itch to continue. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I wanted to do this second page with kind of a different method. I wanted to go solely charcoal. I have this reference that I really, really want to do, and it's black and white, and I figure I could either go whole black and white with only charcoal, or I could add a background color, and I decided to do the background color, obviously. While that dries, I decided to do something else so that I'm not just twiddling my thumbs. And now that it's dry, here is Joaquin Phoenix, a very handsome fellow, but he is famous. And that means everybody knows what he looks like. So I have to try my hardest here. Best foot forward. And I'm really hopeful. I feel the portrait is a great portrait. There's excellent lighting, dark darks, light lights, my favorite things. And I go in first and foremost with the blending stump so that I can just map everything out. The more detailed I can be with this, the more I'm going to help my future self out. So I'm trying to get everything as good as possible before I start in with the charcoal. Now this time I decide to pretty much just start from the top left so that I don't end up smudging everything super crazy. So hair goes in first. I'm not worrying super much about the details right now. I'm just trying to get the darkest spots down. And the coolest thing, so this is my second 100 heads challenge. The first 100 heads challenge, I was learning a lot. And what I learned the most then is pretty much face structure, where everything goes on the face. So once I was done with that, I walked away feeling so much more confident in how I approached faces. But there is something also that happened that I didn't realize happened. Since I know what the face should look like, I know where my downfalls are. I know what I tend to do wrong because I've seen myself do that wrong thing over and over and over again. So now I know to watch myself whenever I'm starting to do that thing, and I can fix it right then and there instead of having to go back and try to figure out what is wrong. Why does this look weird? Basically, I'm able to fix my mistakes as they happen now instead of just hoping that it works out. You know, I'm able to control a little bit more of the outcome a little bit better, which is really cool and exciting. Okay, back to this portrait. The way that I'm doing this charcoal is a little bit different than I have been doing on this spread so far. And really what's different is I am adding more charcoal to phase 1 than I usually do. I'm adding in little tiny strokes here and there, and honestly, it looks really cool before I even blend it. It's really tempting to just leave it how it is. But I'm going in with more details on phase 1. So I spent a lot of time on the lips and his scar to try to get that to look like him, because it's a very defining feature on him. So defining features are things that people notice the most, and if you get those wrong, it's very obvious that you did either a poor job or really that's all that it means. So if you can get the defining features right, then you can kind of gloss over some of the other things and people might not notice so much. So I'm finishing up on my preliminary phase 1 and sharpening up my pencil to start with the eyeball, and man, I do not want this to break. Don't you wish you could just zoom in when you're drawing? When you're drawing really tiny things, that would be so nice. I started on the iris and I'm drawing them very lightly so that I can erase them easily if I need to. And I sit back and look at them and make sure they're not like cross-eyed or cockeyed. And then once I like the placement of them, then I go in darker and add in the detail. Now using a tiny eraser smudges it, but in a very interesting way. It doesn't really pick up the pigment unless you really, 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 really go at it. So if you use it just minimally, it kind of smudges the charcoal in like a very shiny way, which is unusual for a regular smudging tool. So that was really cool to do on the eyeballs to make them look way more shiny than if I had done just a regular smudging tool. Look at the smudging. I love it so much. I'm trying to add a lot more texture than I usually do because it's a famous guy and I want it to be as accurate as possible. So I'm doing a lot more dabbing with both the blender and charcoal because skin isn't totally smooth. We're not plastic. So everybody has like bumps and grooves to their skin, whether you know it or not. So I'm trying to get that just very subtle texture with, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing that. So now that preliminary phase 1 is done, I'm going in and adding a darker layer to get those blacks really black. Now in this picture of him, he is starting to go gray right about where I'm drawing. I'm thinking about how I'm going to handle that because I don't have great luck with erasing charcoal completely. So I either have to not draw in those strands or I have to go in with something else later to make that brighter. So I'm trying to contemplate how I'm going to handle that as I move on with the rest of the face. And while it is time to start adding details, I also don't want to lose the looseness of it, which I think is my sign that I'm starting to overwork it. So I'm cleaning up my paper from my smudgy fingers and I'm gonna go in just a little bit more and add some more just last minute details, which also includes moving his entire eyebrows. He started to look like somebody else, or maybe I was just too close to the project that I started to see him not accurately. I'm not sure, but ultimately I felt like his eyebrows were too high and that they needed to come down. He's also starting to look like two different actors to me, so I'm trying to get his essence back. And yeah, the other two guys, I wonder if you think the same. Henry Cavill and Dermot Mulroney. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I recognize him from My Best Friend's Wedding, one of the most core memory best movies out there, in my opinion. But I didn't realize that they all look very similar until I started drawing this guy. I showed him my drawing to my husband and he goes, "Oh my goodness, I know who that is, but I can't place him." And he thought that this was Dermot Mulroney from My Best Friend's Wedding, among other things. But to me, My Best Friend's Wedding. But when I said Joaquin Phoenix, he's like, "Oh yeah, I can see that too." How crazy that they both look so similar and they both have scars on their lips. That's all I'm gonna say. This next portrait is the last one for today, so I wanted to follow the same color theme that I did for Joaquin, and you know, me and Joaquin, first name basis over here. I really wanted to get them two to match a little bit, so front facing, no head tilts or anything like that, nothing crazy, and also the singular background color. I think it looks really nice. So I'm doing the same method. I am not going to spend as much time on this one as I did with Joaquin. First of all, because the lighting was not as intense. The darks were not as dark and the shadows were not as intense on the face. So there's simply just not that much to do. And because of the lack of shadows, I decided to add in her very red, distinct nose and cheeks. And that's something that stands out on the picture anyway. So I wanted to capture that as kind of the main thing about this picture. I almost wish that I didn't do that. I kind of wish that I left this page just one tone, one color for each portrait. But then if I didn't do that on her, you would be losing the most defining part of the picture. So I kind of weighed that back and forth and I just decided to, what the heck, go for it. Can you guys tell me what you know Joaquin Phoenix from? I know him from Signs. That's pretty much the first movie that I saw him in and pretty much the only movie that I've seen him in. Oh, you know what? He's also the Joker, isn't he? I haven't seen that movie. So back to this drawing, I think alcohol markers are crazy. You put the pigment down on the paper and you have to wait so long to tell exactly what it's gonna look like. You don't know if it's really gonna actually blend out the way that you're hoping it will, but in this case, I think she looks really cool, and I'm glad that I put down such a dark pigment for her nose and blush areas. So it's kind of cool because on this one, I'm seeing the things that I did on Joaquin that I started to implement on her. So I do the same little tiny movements around her eyes because it worked for Joaquin. It might as well work for her too, right? And I'm not sure if it captured the same element of interest as it did for Joaquin. And I think that's because the shadows weren't as crazy. So to have such little amount of that cool effect, it's not very impactful. I wish I could have done it for her whole face. And I'm thinking now, I probably could have. And just done my own thing with it instead of trying to make it as accurate to the reference as possible. That might be something that I experiment with in the future, is trying to put my own spin on certain elements of reference photos that I wish were more intense, like shadows and shading. So I'm adding in the iris really lightly, and I'm looking at it to see if she's actually looking at me. And once I know that she's looking at me, then I darken up the iris, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. And somehow she ends up looking a little bit scared. I'm not sure why. Also, I haven't really spent a lot of time to figure out why. I decided that I don't mind that she looks a little bit scared, like she's 1,000 yards staring right into your soul. But I don't mind it. I think it adds something to such a simple drawing. You know, we don't have the crazy shadows, so we have to have a crazy something. Might as well make it the eyes. So I start smudging out her face, and I'm not thrilled with how dark it turns out. I'm trying to think now of how I could go about doing this with charcoal in the future to make it look lighter and not so dirty almost. And I'm not sure that there has to be a way. I just don't know how. I have to probably use a different tool first of all. And at this point, I'm just thinking out loud of how I could change it in the future. I don't think she ends up looking terrible. She definitely follows the same theme as the whole spread. I think her as a single, if you were to take just this portrait, I wish that she looked different. And it's simply the charcoal and how I use it. I think it looks just too dirty, too mangy. And that's not what this calls for. I tried to accentuate her eyelashes to try to make it look less dirty. More eyelashes has to mean not dirty, right? But I think at this point, like I said, I'm 7 hours into this spread, and the time doesn't bother me, but I am a little bit tired, and I don't necessarily want to save this for another day because I don't know how I could do it really any differently. This is pretty much the only method, give or take some steps, that I have. So I'd have to come up with a whole new system or implement something that I don't know exists yet. So that's what I'm dealing with. And like I said, I don't think she looks terrible. She definitely fits the spread. I just don't think that this style fits her. But I'm going through with it and doing some finishing touches with some eraser, and I do end up blotting quite a bit of the pigment from her cheeks with the eraser. And I think it helps, but also it took away some of the depth. So maybe the depth would have been nice to keep with the shadows, but maybe this is nice too. She definitely looks younger without all that dirty texture on her face. But she still, you know, you win some, you lose some. I wouldn't necessarily consider it a loss. Like I said, it's a love-hate relationship, I suppose. So at this point, I am ready to decide 100% that I am doing the 100 heads challenge. So I did the 100 on the left. I've got to fill out this spot with the heads portion on the right. And I just freehanded this, and I tried to show you that this was one of my most fun things to do as a kid, was to draw really long letters and then look at it from flat, and the letters look really short. I don't know if it captured that, but that's one of my favorite things when I was a kid. And then I do a absolutely terrible job of writing a cursive part 2. I'm not a calligrapher. I wish I was, but I do my best, and it is what it is. It still looks like something. Does it look fancy? I don't know. And then I go in and I number them all in the order that I did them. And I fix this guy's neck. And here we go. This is 1 through 5 of my new 100 Heads Challenge Part 2. I had so much fun doing this, and I hope you did too, and I'll see you in the next one.